Vamos continuar a debater a gastronomia, a pensá-la. Só é comida se a comermos? É uma boa pergunta esta. Só é comida se a comermos? Vem da cabeça de uma pessoa que estuda e que analisa, é uma criativa e que pensa a forma como nós, pessoas, nos relacionamos com aquilo que comemos. Ela é uma criativa, é pioneira. É mesmo assim, a gastronomia é isto, é convívio, é partilha, não é? E a conversa boa é como as cerejas. Dizia eu em relação à nossa próxima palestrante, que é uma pessoa que pensa a relação que nós pessoas temos com a comida. Ela é pioneira de renome mundial em Eating Design. Ela é fundadora do Dutch Institute of Food and Design. É a Marije Vogelzang. Ela vem aqui acima. Obrigada.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I wanted to wear this because today I am not just a designer, but I'm also a therapist. And maybe you've seen people wearing this. It says the treatment. And this is my costume for today when I work at the food massage salon. There is actually, if you go out here and you go to the right, there is a space where we are holding a food massage salon and where you can actually have a food massage. And of course, all of you, you know what a food massage is. I don't have to explain that to you. You've had food massages before, right? No, I don't think anybody had. You might have a foot massage though. But I won't spoil the surprise. I really recommend just to go there. It's a 20-minute experience where there will be an integration between massage and food experience. And it's quite a relaxing experience. So if you need just a little break, you can just go there, 20 minutes, and that's all I'm going to tell you about that, because it's a surprise. So you might wonder, like, what is a designer? Like, what is an eating designer? Do we really need design when it comes to food? I think it's a fair question. I was trained as a designer 20 years ago, and when I was a student at the Design Academy in Eindhoven, I was trying to find my perfect material, because that's what most designers do. Some people, they go and work with wood, some people go and work with ceramics or plastics or whatever kind of material, and most designers kind of find their way to shape objects with these materials. But then when I was a student, I was wondering, first of all, I was looking at my peers and I saw them made beautiful things, and I couldn't really do that. So I was wondering if I was actually a designer. But at the same time, I was also thinking, you know, the world is so full of things. It's so full of chairs, you know. We have thousands of chairs. Do we really need to design more chairs? Do we really need to make more things that eventually go into the trash that, you know, people will buy again and then throw away again and buy again? I don't know. I didn't feel very inspired to just make new objects. But then what do? Well, I just started crying and go home and make dinner, because that was what I liked to do. So I was in my kitchen feeling a bit sad because I couldn't find my design purpose. And then I was making dinner, and while I was making dinner, I thought, well, actually, all these ingredients I have here are materials as well. All my kitchen tools are actually workshop tools. Maybe I can start to work with food as a designer. And it sounds so obvious because designers always make things for humans, but for some reason, this very thing that actually enters the body, the thing that humans really need before they can even sit on a design chair, food is something that designers never thought of. 20 years ago, food and design just didn't exist. So I started working with food, and most people just started laughing at me, and they told me, yeah, food is not for designers. Food is for chefs, or it's for housewives. So as a designer, no, that's just stupid. But I wasn't sure. I thought it's so interesting that if I make something, that it actually enters your body, that you can not only just see what I make, but you can taste it, you can touch it, you can smell it. When you eat my food, you might even get memories of a time that you were forgotten. I was so fascinated by that. I'm so fascinated that as a designer you can choose something that doesn't last, that doesn't actually stay there forever, but it's part of the life cycle. It's actually part of your body and eventually ends up in the toilet. I really like to say that I design shit, because that's what happens to everything I make eventually. And I like this idea, because shit can become manure, and it can actually fertilize the plants that are growing here as well. Probably not fertilized by human shit, but you never know. So you might wonder then, what do you do when you're a designer working with food? People were telling me, you're a designer, you work with food, you're a food designer, but that would imply that I literally design food. But I think food is already perfectly designed by nature. I don't need to design food. But I am very interested in the act of eating. I am very interested in the verb of eating, in the connection between food and agriculture, the connection between food and landscape, biodiversity, looking at how we eat, the emotional effect of eating, psychology and eating, human behavior and food. All these things, I think, it's all in a merge of eating. So that's why I say I'm an eating designer and not a food designer. The food is there, but how do we perceive the food? How do we enjoy the food? How do we connect through the food? These are the things that I like to work with. So I'm just going to show you a few examples so you get an image with what I'm telling you. So when I started, nobody wanted to hire me anyway, because people really didn't understand what a designer would do with food. So I started doing lots of dinners, because that was kind of understandable. And every year, actually around this time in November, people would ask me to do Christmas dinners. And I was always thinking, I'm not sure, if I want to do a Christmas dinner. It's so already designed, it's full of cliches, it's overly decorated. What can you really do with a Christmas dinner? But then I thought, Christmas, in essence, next to the story of Jesus Christ, is about being together, sharing food together, and feeling a connection with each other. So I made a really simple intervention, and we made this Christmas dinner where we invited 40 strangers, so 40 people that didn't know each other at the dining table. And the intervention was very simple. It was just a tablecloth, and normally a tablecloth hangs down to the floor, and this one was up into the air, and it had some slits in it. So this is the space, and this is how we are at the table. So it's 40 people that don't know each other. And the reason for doing this is first because, when you don't know each other, but you're all in a strange situation, you naturally start to bond. But the other thing is also that when you are only with your head in this structure, you actually feel each other's movements. You can really feel, everybody movement, so you can literally be connected to each other. And also, if you cannot see someone's clothes and only someone's face, you become more equal, and in that sense also feel more connected to each other, because you don't have the sharing of the identity through the clothes. And this is when you go to the bathroom. I prefer this side, actually, to see all the bags. So it's not only the setting, it's also the food, but the food is very simple, very pure. So you see that the girl here, she has 2 plates well, it's actually one plate, but the plate is cut in two. And she has a really nice ripe melon. And everybody on her side of the table has the melon. Everybody on the opposite side of the table has raw ham. Well, raw ham and melon is a classical combination. You don't have to explain to anybody what to do. People will understand that they need to share their half plate to complete their dish. And for the main course, it was the same setting. So the first person would get a huge piece of rib. The next person would get a whole lettuce, and it would be cleaned, but it would still be whole with crouton and dressings on top. The third person would get a whole pumpkin stuffed with seeds and nuts and everything from the oven. And the last person would get the potatoes. So people are social animals. You don't have to tell people what to do. They will understand that they just need to cut everything up and start sharing together and start interacting together. And we noticed that at the end of the dinner, everybody was relating to each other. Everybody was connected to each other. It's a really nice conduit to get everybody connected together. And in the end, there were scissors as well, so you could cut yourself loose, because you didn't really need the curtain anymore to connect you together. Now there was this intangible bond between people. What I'm really curious about when it comes to food, and maybe not only food, but when it comes to our life, is that, we are humans. Our whole body, we call it like part of our human. This is my human body. And my whole body is full of senses. So everywhere I can sense, I can feel touch, I can feel warm and cold. I'm a little bit cold now, actually. I can smell, I can hear, and it's kind of magical. If you look at children, the way they experience life, they would actually now go and touch the floor and then think, oh, that feels kind of nice. Maybe my daughter, she would lick the floor, maybe. I don't know, maybe my daughter is just crazy. But I'm sure you did these kind of things when you were a child. You were just experiencing all your senses. But then when you grow up, you learn that you just have to sit into a chair like you're doing now and just sit there and listen and not really do anything, instead of like making your body into an absorbing machine of information. And in a way, it's a shame, because we can really live through our senses. We can really experience our senses, but we don't really do that. And even when we eat, while food is actually such a highly sensorial experience, but even when we eat, we don't even touch our lips. We just open our mouth, we put the food inside, and then we start experiencing the food. But actually, our lips are one of the most dense parts, filled with the highest density of nerve ends in your body. So if you actually do use your lips, it's a really rich sensation. And so I was thinking in how we, as humans, always eat, but then we are kind of distanced to our food, especially when we eat with cutlery or chopsticks, but most parts of the world we don't really use our hands. So we even have this metal piece between us and the food, and then we put the food inside our mouth. So it seems as if we don't even want to touch that food, whereas there's so much to explore if the food is warm or cold or soft or hard or crumbly. So I was thinking, can we go beyond that? Can't we just celebrate the badass machine that we have, which is our body, to really experience food? So I made this food experience in Hong Kong for a chefs association. And I was thinking Hong Kong is also fascinating because chefs are working there in restaurants in this urban, dense area. And it's really hard to actually get to know the farmers that produce your food. It's really hard to make a relationship between the food that you have and the farming landscape. So I was thinking like the act of grazing, how cows are grazing, that you have to eat with your mouth like that, is this kind of thing that is so far from the urban reality that I was trying to incorporate the two. So people eat without even using their hands. So they have the food, which is really kind of delicate little bites, on top of upside down glasses, and then they just eat it like that. But when you get so close to your food that you eat it with like that, you smell it much better, you focus on it much better, you see the colors, and then you use your lips to experience the food. So we designed the food in a way that it was that it also did something for the sensation for your lips. So my only challenge was, how can we make sure people don't cheat, that they don't actually take the food with their hands, that they actually use their mouth? Yeah, it doesn't look very aesthetically nice, right? Yeah, and the dessert was underneath the glasses. So on top was the food, and then the glasses were taken away, and then dessert was on the table, and the light was coming through the table. But to make sure people didn't actually use their hands, we gave them leeks. So they had to hold leeks with the people next to them, and then we made sure they didn't cheat. And we had a lot of leek soup the next day. Well, people think sometimes that designers always make things, make new stuff, make new objects. And I think this is a little bit of a shame. I think designers can also make new perspectives on things that we already know. And that's what I really like to do, is to create experiences for people to see or engage with something that they think they already know, but suddenly see it in a different light. And one of the things that I'm really fascinated by is tap water. And in the Netherlands, we have one of the purest tap waters in the world. It's really amazing. The tap water, in some places, is even more pure than the bottled waters that you can buy in the supermarket. Still, most Dutch people actually buy bottled water, which is full of plastic, which is very awkward. And you would think that if you've got such fresh tap water, that people would be really grateful, that they would open the tap and started singing and maybe praying because they were so grateful for this tap water. But actually they're not. People just flush their toilets with this fantastic pure water. They wash their cars with the water. They wash their clothes. And nobody really thinks about tap water. And what I find fascinating is that when I travel through the country and I go from one city to the other, and you taste the tap water, you taste that the flavor is really very different. But people don't really talk about tap water. It's not very sexy, and they definitely don't talk about the flavor of tap water. What people do like to talk about, and what they like to appreciate, and what they like to pay a lot of money to or for, is wine or other kinds of spirits. And people like to talk about the wine, and they like to have the wine tastings, and they have a lot of appreciation and respect for wine. And I think, wow, isn't that fascinating? Because eventually, tap water might be much more special than wine. In the end, if you just have like a few months to live, yeah, maybe if you have one day to live, then you prefer wine. But if you just have a few years to live, you might like to prefer water. So I was thinking about water and how the taste of water is different in different regions. And I was thinking, can't we have like a water tasting to actually get the waters from all the capitals of the 12 provinces together in one place so we can actually taste them? Because when you talk about wine, you talk about the terroir of the wine, like how actually the soil and where the grapes were growing is influencing the wine. But actually it's the same with water. Water has terroir too. So when you actually put the waters together all in one place and start tasting them, you can actually taste that they do taste really different. And you can actually compare the tap waters together. And you can actually start to appreciate the subtle differences in tap water. And maybe you can also make some water pairings with the food. And so eventually I hope that by not talking about how people should be grateful for the water and how they should respect the water, because if you tell people they should do this, they don't really care. But if you lure them into the story of understanding the water qualities and the taste of the water, then they will start to feel connected to the water and they will want to appreciate it. So I hope that one day there will be a restaurant with a wine menu, but also with a water menu. Sometimes you see water menus, but then you see the expensive Fiji waters and Evian. But just with the regional, local tap waters, maybe filtered, but as a food and water pairing. So there are a lot of things when it comes to food. There are a lot of issues when it comes to food in the world. And why I think that we need designers is not necessarily because I think we need more stuff when it comes to food. But I do think that designers can move through the food system. Like the food system is so full of specialists that know exactly how to get the best milk, how to make the best herbs, how to grow the best apples, how to produce the best seeds, for example. But being a specialist also means you have to focus on what you do. And the good thing about that is that you can become really good at what you do, but the challenging part is that it's really hard to actually look beyond what you do and actually make a link with other players in the food system. I think designers, they can play a role by not being a specialist, not knowing exactly how to produce that food, but actually moving through that food system, and they can make unexpected combinations. They can address these bigger issues in collaboration with the specialists and start to propose new ideas that actually go beyond the plate, that go beyond the land, and that go beyond what's actually happening in someone's body. So they can collaborate together with scientists, with doctors, with chefs, with farmers, with mothers that feed their children. I think there are so many combinations because we do need more creative ideas in the food system. If we look at the future of our food, we do need to find solutions for food waste. We do need to find solutions for biodiversity, for pollinator decline, and maybe also for obesity. Obesity worldwide is still growing. People are still overeating. So I've been working together with some scientists working on food, human behavior, behavioral science. And they have figured out that people have no clue when they see a plate of food. Our eyes really are very incapable of communicating in the right way to our stomachs how much this food actually is. And most of us are trained to empty our plate. So over the course of time, in a few years, we actually always eat a little bit too much. So I've been working with behavioral scientists to look at what can we do so people actually, because they don't really see how much food is on the plate, to make them eat less and still have the feeling they feel full. So I've been developing some objects that actually, in a way, subconsciously look like food, but they're inedible. So you can put them in between your food, but then you actually eat a little bit less. So the plate looks full, so your brain gets the image, there's enough food, but eventually you eat less, because when you take it away, it's much less, and you can't eat the object that's there. So you can play around with it. And the videos don't really work, do they? You can play around with it, and once you start also actually styling your food with these objects, you also become more conscious about what you eat. And when you eat more mindful, you also eat less because you feel filled quicker. So another project I've done with scientific research, which for me is very inspiring, is a project I actually did with my own daughter. So you see here my daughter when she was about 3 years old. Now she is already 14, so she's as tall as I am. But here she was about 3 years old, and even though she was very sweet and very cute, she didn't really want to eat her vegetables. And I thought, oh no, I can't have that. I want her to eat her vegetables, but how do I do that? And the first thing, there were two things. The first thing I saw was she was a happy child, but when I would put her at the dining table, she would think, okay, this is the dining table. I don't have that much to say about my life, but if I close my mouth at the dining table, my mom will behave really funny, so I have a really big effect on her. Which, I kind of respect the attitude of wanting to have some saying about your life. But on the other hand, it was really frustrating for me as the mother. So I thought I have to find a different place to put her, not just at the dining table, because for her that's linked to some kind of power resistance situation. The second thing was that I read this research about that you have to taste something 7 times before you can accept a new flavor. It's like learning a new language. You just have to repeat and repeat and repeat. So there were 2 things that I thought I have to do. I have to make sure she repeats and tastes again and again, and I have to make sure that I find another place that's not the dining table. So I invited her with all of her friends from the daycare to my studio, and I told them we're going to do a veggie bling bling workshop. So it's like a table full of vegetables, and of course we're not going to eat, we're going to play. So we were going to make jewelry with vegetables, and the way to make the jewelry was by using their teeth, because kids have really sharp teeth, so they can make really nice shapes with their teeth. And so they had no problem just by starting, playing, doing the workshop, starting to play around with the vegetables, making shapes, and of course no one was spitting the food out because, they weren't eating, they were just playing. No one was wondering, do I actually want to taste this? Everybody was putting everything inside their mouth. And honestly, there was a boy, and he was creating a bracelet. So he was having this bracelet around his arm, and he was chewing, and he wanted to make a nice shape, but then I think he just got distracted. So he was just chewing and looking up into the air and dreaming away. And eventually he just ate the whole bracelet. The bracelet was gone. I should have filmed it. But I asked all the parents later on if their children were more open to trying the vegetables, and yes, they were. And also my daughter, now she's 14, she loves vegetables. It's not very scientific, but it's interesting to see how you can actually change the situation to change perspective on the thing that you think you know, which is food. One of the things that I see in the supermarket, and I'm not sure how popular this is in Portugal. Are there a lot of vegetarians in Portugal? Is it a growing thing? Yeah? And do you see in the supermarket next to the meat aisle, do you have the vegetarian alternative? Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty similar, right? So I'm fascinated by the vegetarian alternative section in the supermarket. So there is the meat section, which has all the traditional cuts, like the fillet and the schnitzel and the minced and the hamburger and all these variations of meat and the sausages. And then there is the vegetarian section, where you have like literal copies of what you have in the meat section, but then it is made from soy protein or other kinds of protein. And what I find fascinating there is, being a vegetarian is actually a good thing. You do a justice to the world. You use less water, you use less resources. There's nothing wrong with people choosing to be a vegetarian. But the thing is, if you want to have an alternative, but you make it a direct copy, it means that when you have an original, for example, when you have an original painting and you make a copy of the painting, a copy is always inferior because you always compare it to the original and nothing can ever be the original. And I think this is a friction because if you want to be a vegetarian and if you want to have an alternative to meat, there's not a problem. But if you always feel that this is something inferior, you want to have like a new narrative. You want to have something that maybe you're proud of. You want to have something that you think is even a better choice than the meat, instead of having always to compare the real thing to the copy. So I was thinking, what if you can actually make these protein structures that are a replacement for meat? What if you actually use those to make a new narrative, a more positive narrative? So I invented 4 new animals. So these are vegetarian animals. And the first one is called the herbast. The herbast is about this big, and it lives in the herbal fields of southern France. And it runs through these fields, and it has to be careful not to be eaten by predators. So it sits still, and it has a fur which is completely overgrown with herbs. And because it looks very herby, it's very hard to find. So it's a really great camouflage. Therefore, this meat is also a little bit more expensive because it's really hard to find the herbast. But once you get it, it's very tasty because the stir-fried chops, the ones that you see there, they already have the herbs inside, so you don't have to add any seasoning. They're already seasoned, so you can just put them in your cooking pan and stir-fry them, and they're good to eat. Another thing about the herbast is that it is actually a square-shaped animal, which makes it really convenient for transport and packaging. And also at the table, everybody gets an equal share, so it's a kind of pacifist meat. Then there is the ponty. The ponty is about this big, and it lives in the empty volcanoes of southern Albania, where it makes a little burrow in these hard magma layers to make a little nest for its babies. And it has a very firm tail because it makes these hard magma layers. It needs a firm tail to make these little hollow parts. And because it has a firm tail, it's really easy to eat as a party snack because you can just pick it up by the tail, eat the meat, and keep your hands clean. And also, this animal eats the ashes of the volcano. So the meat of this animal is slightly and delicately smoked. Then there is the bikyo, which is a vegetarian fish. It lives in the shallow waters of Japan, where it feeds itself on the seaweed that grows there. And because it eats so much seaweed, the antioxidant level of this fish is really high. And the real connoisseur can see that because the green stripes, they represent the antioxidant level. And also aesthetically, it's really useful for sushi and sashimi purposes. Then there is the sapiku, which is a vegetarian bird, which lives in the maple trees in Canada, and it sits high up in the tree, and it eats from the sap of these maple trees, and therefore the meat of this bird is very sweet and tender. So it's a kind of dessert meat. So you can eat it together with ice cream and chocolate as dessert. Here you go. Well, what you saw here were prototypes. We made them from marzipan, but sometimes I also actually collaborate with real producers of vegetarian products to find out if we can actually create a place where people start to think in a more open way about vegetarian alternatives. And then we do a ponty party where we grill the volcano animals that are smoked. And people are very confused about that, but they do like how they taste. So one of the last projects I would like to show you is a project I did in Hungary. And it's a project I did with gypsies. And I just want to show you this film without explaining too much. I just want to tell you that what you need to know is that gypsies in Hungary are really seriously being rejected by society. And that's what it's good to know if you watch this film in the back of your head. The sound should be on now.
This is a performance around a group of Roma gypsy women. I think if you want to think about understanding between different social groups, I think food is a very, very strong tool that you can use to create a bond between people. To create understanding for gypsy people, I think to use food is one thing, but then to be fed by someone is another thing. And I think that's why also it's only women, because it's mothers that feed their children. It's this kind of essence of life. I think the idea of feeding is a very intimate. A mother feeds her child with food, but also with love at the same time. I thought about making this installation where people are getting physically fed with food, but also with stories.
Az almával az a kedves emlékem, hogy összegyűltünk így gyerekek, és engem a nagy gyerekek nagyon-nagyon szerettek valamiért, lehet, hogy azért, mert begyhárka voltam, és vittek magukkal, és kerestek egy nagy házat, ahol nagyon sok a almafa. És beloktunk, és hát leszettük az almát, és majd jött a parasztember, és így nagyon kellett rohanni, nagyon-nagyon futottunk, szóval életem első olyan futás és utolsó, és amikor futottam, és utánunk kiabált, hogy te büdös cigány, és kiderült, hogy csak én voltam cigány.
The installation is made in a way that you can't see each other. You're sitting under the table, you have this little tent. Inside there are pictures and text and a flashlight, and it's a kind of strange environment. And then you sit there and the lady tells you her memories and the memories of the food that she has, and she will include you in her life in that way.
Karácsony volt, és bejött egy ilyen, nem tudom, ilyen tenyeres talpas nőre emlékszem valójában. És volt egy lány, akivel folyamatosan együtt mentünk házról házra, mi az intézetről intézetre, vagy nem tudom, hogy mondjam neked. Ő szőke volt. És akkor bejött, azt kérem, meg azt kérem. És akkor így valamiért kellett mennünk vele, kimentünk ő hozzá, és egész nap takarítani kellett, vagy jöttek a vendégek, és betettek minket egy ilyen hideg szobába, de nagyon éhesek voltunk. Vissza is vittek minket este, és annyira gyönyörű volt, annyira szép, csodálatos szép, mert csak mindenkinek lehet ilyen karácsonyon, hogy így kinyílt a díszterem ajtaja, és megláttam a magas fát, csodálatosan feldíszítve, és a sok-sok gyerek ott eszik, és kiabál, és beszélget, és jól érzi magát. És a slusszpoén az, hogy csak akkor ehettem narancsot. Karácsonykor ehettem csak narancsot, és kaptunk mindenféle tárgyakat, ilyen hülyeségeket, és én elcseréltem narancsra. Elkezdtem így, hogy neked adom ezt, te add nekem a narancsot, és rengeteg narancs volt.
If you have had that experience and someone shared her food with you and her story with you, you cannot hate that person. You have to like that person. It's Immanuel Kant that said that if you break bread with each other, you can't break each other's neck.
Adok egy olyan dalt, amire gyerekkoromban mindig elaltatott egy nevelőnél. Jó? Csukd a szemed. Légy szíves! Szél viszi messzi a fellegeket, s mögötte lángol az ég. Nyújtsd ide, édes, a kis kezedet, ki tudja, látlak-e még? Ki tudja, ölele a két karom, ki tudja, csokol-e a szád? barát galambom, ki tudja mely nap és mely hajnalán, indul az után tovább. Örültem, hogy itt voltál. Azt szeretném, ha nyugodtan itt ülnél, majd jön egy kísérő, aki elkísér.
Nagyon köszönöm.
Nagyon jó volt, mert tényleg olyan volt, mint egy kuckot, tehát így azonnal egy ilyen nagyon személyes térbe kerültem, ami teljesen azonnal magával ragadott ezekkel a fényképekkel, meg pont szembe velem egy szoptatós kép volt, meg nagyon jó mondatok voltak, meg látszott, hogy gyerekrajz, szóval azonnal egy életet éreztem. Olyan volt valóban, mint hogyha a saját anyukám lenne, vagy én, mint mikor anyuka voltam, vagy most is az vagyok, mikor odalépett hozzám az Ágnes, gondolom ő volt az, ilyen nagyon kedves volt, és etetett, és nagyon szép volt.
When we started doing this project, we had the 10 ladies that were going to do the feeding, and they were telling me, like, we don't think that you should do this. We don't think that there's anybody that will want to hear our story. No one will come. People will laugh. This is stupid. And I said, yeah, I don't know. You know, I've never been to Hungary before. I don't know any gypsies. I'm just an outsider. But let's just try this thing. Let's just see how it works. So we started doing this. They fed over 400 people in 4 days. And from the first moment they started doing this, and every session was just like 15, 20 minutes, they noticed that people were very interested. They were very eager to get to know these women, to get in touch with them. And I could just tell, just from the way that these 10 women were standing, just their body language. When they started, they were like this. And then already after half a day, they were like this. They were so happy because there was such a fantastic energy. But I didn't want people to actually see the person. Actually, that's one of the reasons why you can't see each other. There's this veil between the two. Because I thought, what happens in the human brain is when you can actually see that person, then people start to think, yeah, you know, gypsies, meh, I don't like them that much, but she's nice. That's how human beings think. They have this kind of mode of exception for certain people. And what I was trying to go for is to give them an experience that was so long-lasting that if they would go into the streets and see a gypsy, that they would think, wow, maybe this is her, or maybe this is her brother or her father, or this is her daughter. So I was hoping to make a kind of generalization in people's minds to open up for gypsies in general and not only to make one exception. The other reason why they couldn't make any eye contact was that I found out that, you know, being fed by a stranger is super scary and uncomfortable. It's really something that's not very nice. So what can you do to actually be fed by a stranger but still feel comfortable enough that you actually want to have that experience and that will become a good experience? And I found out that eye contact is one of the most crucial things for people to either feel comfortable or feel horrible. So if you do have eye contact and if someone feeds you, then you will probably accept it, but you might go and smile perform some social behavior, but you might not feel very well inside. But if you can just relax because there is no eye contact, then you can actually have the full experience and actually listen to the story and actually enjoy it. So for me, that's something I found is really crucial if you want to actually make an engagement between people through feeding, is actually make sure there's no eye contact. What also happened in this project is that the most left-wing newspaper and the most right-wing newspaper, national newspapers in Hungary, started writing about this project. And the whole debate about gypsy integration started off again in a more humane way. And for me, that was something I could have never imagined, that a design project or a creative project could spark those kind of things. And I'm really happy that it did. I think the whole thing obviously is still not solved, but I do think sometimes we underestimate the power of creative thinking. I see that many companies are looking for different ways to express their products. I work for big companies like Nestlé, for example, and they always, of course, they always want to make the new product and make the new move, so eventually they can have more revenue. But sometimes people underestimate that if you really start to make radical changes through creative thinking, you can actually end up much further than that you actually perceived in the beginning. It's actually just a matter of trying, it's a matter of trust, and it's a matter of not always needing to know where you will end up, but to truly explore in a creative way. And I think designers in the food chain should be more. I think we really need more creative people in the food chain, but we don't need designers making just more stuff. I think we need designers that are there to actually listen to the people that are already in the food chain, to make new combinations and to make new and exciting ideas. So I started the Dutch Institute of Food and Design, which is a global platform for designers working with food, because I've been doing this now for 20 years, but there's a lot of people around the world that are just starting this. And in some places, there are countries where there are just 1 or 2 people who work with food in a creative way. And for them, I think it's really important that they find themselves supported by this global movement which is going on. So we have now over 22 correspondents, over 22, that's 23. No, I'm not sure. We have more than 20 correspondents around the world writing about food and design. We are having the discourse about what is food and design, what can we actually do, what is good food and design, and what is not really useful, and how can we actually bring this to the future. We have a traveling exhibition about the future of food, because that's another thing that I think designers can really bring a new perspective, looking at the past, but also looking at the future. Not only thinking about new technologies, not only thinking about, oh, now there's a new system of drones, so we need more drones in the future, but to really look at it in a more sensible way, to look at what did we have in the past. So I think the past, like the previous panel, was really interesting and informative. So how can we bring that kind of knowledge to a future where we might have to deal with climate change, where we might have to deal with growing crops on salt water, where we might have to deal with scarcity of land, where we might have to deal with antibiotics resistance, for example. So all these things, we just have to think about how are we challenging ourselves to influence our behavior, to enrich our lives, to make a more poetic, a more sensible food culture that is sustainable for the future, but that will also enrich us as human beings. Because I think right now the way we are dealing with food in such a mindless way, where we just take for granted that the food is always there, when we go to a supermarket where food is just from all seasons, from all places on earth, which is actually quite fucking incredible that it's there, that we have access to that. But people don't really care. They just take a little bit and they throw it away a little bit. It's understandable, you know, if you are born in this world, or if you are born in this life, in this situation, yeah, it's normal that it's there. But you don't really feel the true value of food. You don't really feel how much work it is to actually grow one carrot. And those kind of things, I think, designers can play a really big role to bring back the true understanding of value, to bring back the true appreciation for food. And I think that is, one of the things that they can do. So whatever kind of role you have in the food system, either you're a consumer or you're a feeder, or maybe you are a producer or a politician working with food, I think it's always very useful to start working with creatives or start opening up your own head for creative ideas, because obviously creative thinking is not only something for designers to do. It's just like cooking is not only for chefs. But I do really want to ask everybody to start to open up more, because I think there is a whole rich world of sensorial experiences, of new insights about food, new perspectives about food, and maybe sometimes the new perspectives are old perspectives about food that we can bring back to make our lives more rich, but also more sensible when it comes to the future of food. So I think our time is getting up, right? I don't know if you are already falling asleep. Are you falling asleep a little bit? Because I know you're pretty, yeah, you fell asleep. Because we can do a little experiment to wake you up with chewing gum, right? Do you have? So chewing gum. I think it's such a silly product. It's so fascinating. Like, is it food? Because you don't really swallow it. Who says it's food? You think it's food? Yeah, you do. But all the others think it's not food. I don't know. You know, it's an experience. You chew it, but you just don't swallow it. I don't know. Thank you. So even if you don't like chewing gum, maybe just take a little piece. It's being handed out now. And you can just open the wrapper. And when you do that, just don't put it in your mouth yet. Just like feel like this wrapper and how it opens up. You don't necessarily have to like it. I'm not a fan of chewing gum per se, but I think it's a funny thing. So let's just celebrate the funny thing of chewing gum. Is it biodegradable, chewing gum? I have no idea. But you can smell it. Did you know that actually, if you talk about food design, there are huge teams of designers who are actually designing chewing gum. It's like a super highly designed product that you now have in your hand. If you go to a design museum, you can maybe find like high design objects, like a beautiful vase or a very beautiful, I don't know if you call it beautiful, but a highly designed sofa. But these kind of products are actually less designed than the little piece of chewing gum that you have in your hand. Well, it's actually much cheaper to have chewing gum than this designed sofa. But if you look at the hours that is spent in the food design of this, compared to the hours spent on designing a chair, it's much less on the chair. Food is really complex if you really want to design it industrially. I don't do that kind of thing, though. It's just that I think it's fascinating sometimes to something that you put in your mouth so mindlessly to actually just look at it and see what is this. So you can just smell it. And because this smell is also really designed, so if you can just now appreciate that someone has designed this smell for you, it's just without any judgment. Judgment's not really useful in this case. So when you have it and when you smelled it, you can just lay it on your tongue, and just feel how it's kind of, it's not really melting, but there is something going on, right? So did you all put it in your mouth? It's so funny to see you looking at me like, oh, what are we doing now? Okay, I have this beautiful board as well. So now you can go and chew it. And just imagine that now you're massaging this little piece of gum. So it's like it's in your mouth and it's saying, oh, now you can eat me. So you massage it and you chew it just for a little bit. And now you actually feel the release of various flavor components, which is also part of the design, and also how long this chewing gum will give you flavor is also part of that design. So just you chew it a little bit. All right, so now you've chewed it, I think, enough. And now you can take it out of your mouth, but just keep it in your hand and look at it, because I want you to look at the shape you gave it. So maybe some people made like a bowl shape. So how many people have like a ball shape? All right, a few. And some people made like a flat shape, probably. How many people did that? Yeah? That's like an equal amount. And then some people made it like really long, like more like a... Did some people do that? No one? Oh yeah, also. Oh, great. But I feel that I'm missing some people. Are there some people that have like a really random shape? All right. And is there anybody who has a shape that I didn't mention yet? So everybody can fit into one of these, right? So like researchers have researched it. And so if this is your shape, then generally you have a kind of organized personality. A little bit tense, maybe. Organized. But maybe a little bit tense. People with the flat shape, they are very practical. But sometimes they need to get a little bit more stimulation. These people that have the long one, they are very flexible in their mind. And sometimes they need a little bit more organization. Can you relate to what I'm writing down? Yes. Is it true? And these people, they're generally just hungry. They just need to go to have lunch. Need lunch. So can you relate to this? I think all of you need lunch right now, right? Yeah, this was just a little joke to do. It's funny because food is never just food. Food is never just like the thing that you eat and that's the experience. Actually, chefs don't even work with food, because if you prepare the food and if it's not eaten, it's actually waste. You're preparing waste. So when is food food? I think that's a very good question. So this little joke at the end is really there to make you see how easy it is to give you a very different experience, even though you're just eating a little piece of chewing gum. But I think you can apply this kind of thinking to many more things, much more things than you think that you can. And I would like to invite you to actually try that on everything that you eat today. Not necessarily this literally, but just to question the things that you eat today and see if there's different things you can do with it. So that was my story for today. I don't know if there's time for questions or if you want to, or if you do have questions, but I'm happy to answer them if you do. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I gave a little kiss to all pieces before. Any questions?
Most of the experiments you did were, with whales or behind you. We have open kitchens and chefs right in front serving food.
So I'll translate your question for everybody, but so you're saying like I did a lot of projects with veils, and when I think of open kitchens where chefs are in front, actually I used to have 2 restaurants, one in Rotterdam and one in Amsterdam. I had for 7 years I had 2 restaurants, very experimental restaurants. And in Rotterdam we were the first restaurant with an open kitchen. It was 2004, so now it's like stupid to think that that was the first one, but apparently it was. Because I thought, I really wanted like this to be open, like more like a house kitchen where you could just like look into the pots and see what's going on. There is a difference between the act of feeding, where I use these veils in a very, in a purpose for the act of eating. So it's feeding and it's eating. So for me, using this textile is a very useful way to suddenly make a very different experience, even though it's not even that different. So normally the tablecloth is down and I put it up into the air. It's a very kind of simple little exercise. But I think food preparation and open kitchen, it's a different area, and I think mostly that is actually closed. So I am a big fan of having open kitchen so you can actually see what's going on. Because already within the food system there is so much exclusion, there's so much hidden, especially in food production, that I think an open kitchen is a liberation. Yeah.
Because I'm a chef for 35 years, so.
And do you like open kitchens? Because practically it's not super handy, I know.
Not only that, it's kind of a little strange to see the reaction right away. So there's a bit of distraction there at times, while you're working, preparing it, to see how it's being received. So a little stressful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because normally you don't really know when people eat it, when they're in the dining room, when you're in the kitchen.
And the last experiment that you did with the gum, if you served it to like a really hungry person, not one of us is testing it out, what would that reaction be? Would they even know if they're not familiar with it to eat it or swallow it? Or
Yeah, I think there's a lot you can explore with food that has not been done yet. I think especially in restaurant settings. If you just look around the world, restaurants are so similar. The way we eat, the way things are served, the way things are done, what waiters are saying, even like certain dishes are always replicated, whereas there is so much more. If you just look at the history of food, there's so much more. And then if you combine that with modern techniques, I think there's an endless amount of things you can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be more complex, or it doesn't have to be more expensive. I think there is a lot of possibilities just if you think from a more creative perspective. Thanks for the question. Yes?
Hello. I have two before I wanted to, I remembered something I read once about your work, that you might have a restaurant in Rotterdam, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember. And your atelier was on top.
Yeah.
So you could listen to the conversations of people underneath. And I found it very, very interesting. And I always thought that, obviously it's forbidden, but having microphones in restaurants, even just to get feedback from people who eat there, it's a very good, it could be a very good tool for chefs and so on.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was great because it was very honest feedback, because they didn't know I could hear them. But it was also horrible because I couldn't focus on my work, and I got to know a lot of secrets that weren't supposed for me.
So now the two questions. The first question is: Do you ever made any contact with Francesca Zampolo, the Italian girl? She's working a lot with
Yeah, we've been in touch. Yeah.
Just for curiosity. And the other one is that you started talking about the Dutch Institute of Food Design, but you didn't went all into it. I realized that there's gonna be a place. I saw a picture of a place where the Food Institute is gonna be built.
No, it's an online platform,
Yeah.
because we want it to be global and accessible.
Sure.
So the name is Dutch because that's where it came from,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's like for everybody.
Okay.
And to be able to have it for everybody, it doesn't have a location.
No, sure.
It's online. But we do have a traveling exhibition which is now in Canada, and we have the Future Food Design Awards, which is also Global Design Awards. But maybe you've seen that there in China there's going to be a food design school being built, but that's not part of the Dutch Institute of Food Design.
Maybe I will look for the picture because I was scrolling on Facebook and I guess I saw a picture of land and saying something. But
That's a food design school in China.
Is it?
But it's
Okay.
not my school.
Okay, cool.
Just happened.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I was asking, because I know it is a platform that gathers people working within the context of food design. Okay.
Yeah, food design, if you don't know it, then you don't see that it's a global movement. That's
Sure.
actually why we started this, to show that it is a global movement. And that every country has its own variations and aspects and questions as well.
How can one, it's my last one, sorry. How can one take part of this platform?
Right now, it's only an online platform to consume, but you can also contribute if you have projects that you want to share, and then we review them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is George, I'm from Brazil. How is the relationship between the Dutch Institute of Food Design or your work with the big companies, with the big industry of food? And what is the main task beyond that, the sustainability and working? Food design has this approach with the big industry. Do you have it?
Yeah, well, personally I work sometimes with Nestle, for example, and my work focuses on the conceptual development, so it's really on the beginning stage. What I hope to do is, when I work with big corporations, to use their body of knowledge and their body of work to add something which is for them productive in a way that is also bringing some new qualities in. So some new ways of thinking or new ways of approaching the work that they already have, so there will be a more positive effect. And of course I always aim that this positive effect will be for positive revenue, but also for positive life or positive work or more sustainable. So, but that's, the platform is really a platform to show. So it's not working actively together with the big players, but I know that general people that are on the platform, designers working with food, also work with bigger corporations as well. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? In the back?
understand the question?
Not really. Yeah, I do. About scientific research, right?
Yes, about.
I work with scientists, but I don't do my own scientific research. I'm really focused on the creative development. And now I'm actually more focused on creative education. So I'm actually making an online course so people working in other fields can also learn food design online. So that's what I am focused on. So I don't have a lifetime next to that to do scientific research. Anybody else? You have a question?
Just a quick follow-up on this last question. I think what I would like to know is, in view of the examples that you've given on what you've done, these last activities, which have a social impact, do you take in those results? Do you publish papers on the experiments, which is not an experiment, but at least the outcome of it? Is there anything published or accessible that people can learn from, besides having the privilege of listening to you here? Is there any pick-up and follow-up?
There has been press on most of the work, but I haven't personally written any papers. But that's why I mentioned I am actually opening up an online course, because I feel that I'm also head of the food non-food department in design academy Eindhoven, so I have my own department in a design school. But that's quite elitist. What I want to do is also inspire people who are already working in the field. So if you're a chef, or if you're a farmer, or if you work in food innovation, to actually be actively educated to bring more creative ideas into your practice. So that is what I am working on now, which is not scientific papers, because I hate writing. All right, that's it, right? We want lunch.
Yes, that's true, Marije. Thank you so much.
Can I just say, please go to the food massage salon, because it's going to be once in a lifetime experience. So this is your chance.
Yeah, food massage salon. 3 notes just before you go, Marije. Thank you for sharing your creative thinking and the power of eating and food to connect ourselves and with others. Thank you so much for your ideas. Food massage salon, I will go there, of course I will. Vamos todos, com certeza, 2 notas importantes. Agora que estamos todos com vontade de almoçar, espero que estejam a gostar. Para todos os credenciados para o almoço, só lembrar que corre no Salão 9, aqui neste piso, junto ao Rio. E para todos aqueles que queiram ir fazer a prova dos vinhos verdes que já está a decorrer, em suas harmonizações, estou a ver que há pessoas que sim, é na Sala de Corredores, piso 1, nascente. Vamos almoçar, às 15 voltamos para mais toques. Eu ainda passo na Food Massage Salon. Muito obrigada, até já!